Former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort and his business associate Rick Gates were back in court today. Manafort made no comments as he made his way to the court, but inside, his attorneys rebutted the prosecution's assertion that he's a flight risk, saying that Manafort is too famous to flee. Manafort and Gates have been on house arrest since Monday when special counsel Robert Mueller unsealed a 12-count indictment against them. CBS News Justice reporter Paula Reid was at the court proceeding inside today, and she joins me now from Washington. Paula, can you give us the highlights of what happened in court today?
So, Rena, this was the first time that Manafort and Gates appeared before the judge that will oversee the rest of their case. Judge Amy Berman Jackson, she set the tone from the outset. She started this hearing off by criticizing the defense attorneys for coming out on Monday after the first hearing and giving statements to the press. She said, quote, "This is a criminal trial, not a public relations campaign," and she encouraged both sides, the attorneys, to review the laws and statutes against sharing any information with the public about an ongoing criminal proceeding. After that, she got to the business of the day, which was reevaluating the conditions of release. Both Manafort and Gates were allowed to be released. They were allowed to go home. They don't have to wait in jail while all of this unfolds. But there were some conditions. First of all, they're confined to their homes. Secondly, they each have to wear a GPS monitoring device, and they had to pose significant bond. And Manafort's attorneys, they really honed in on the GPS monitoring device, and they said, look, our client doesn't need to wear this kind of device. But the judge said that she thinks it's unlikely that she will actually back off of that requirement. She seems more open to sort of moving a little bit on home confinement and allowing them to go back and forth more freely. But she quickly became frustrated, Rena, with both sides, attorneys on both sides, because they hadn't filed the proper paperwork. So she said, you know what, we're not going to make a decision today. All of you file what you need to file. I'll see you again on Monday morning.
Paul, the fact that she seemed a little bit annoyed and called this isn't a public relations campaign, was she getting at the fact that they weren't filing the proper paperwork? Was that what she was hinting at?
She was frustrated that Manafort's lawyers went before the press. There was a huge group of cameras outside the courthouse on Monday. Of course, Manafort's lawyers went before those cameras and really criticized the government's case. And her point was that's not the place to do that. If you don't like the government's case, you can tell me in court filings, you can tell me here in this room, but you're not to go out holding press conferences trying this in the press. And of course, the reason is because eventually there'll be a trial in this case, and she does not want the potential pool of jurors to be tainted by these statements.
Gotcha. Okay. A lot of people were kind of surprised that Gates, Manafort's associate, didn't have a public defender. It's such a high-profile case. Did he end up getting a private lawyer?
He did. He had his attorney today for the first time. Both his public defender and his private attorney were in court today. They introduced themselves, entered their names, and going forward, he will have private counsel who will again file these kinds of arguments, arguing that he doesn't need GPS monitoring. But it remains to be seen whether or not the judge is going to make any modifications. We'll ultimately find out on Monday.
And Paul, what are you watching for next in this case?
To see whether or not the lawyers are responsive to the judge, whether or not she got her message across. Will they start filing certain paperwork? Because it seemed that a lot of things they filed ahead of this hearing, she noted, she's like, what are you asking me for? What are you doing? But these documents contained a lot of really interesting details, right? That Manafort had 3 different passports, that he was filing, these email addresses under aliases. It seemed that a lot of this is sort of an effort to file things in the court of public opinion. And she made it crystal clear. She said, do not do that. Don't be doing things for the press. We're here. This is a court of law. We cannot taint the jury pool. So it'll be interesting to see if on Monday they've all filed things that were necessary, that were proper, and have stopped giving comments to the press.
Okay. And Paul, is it too early to tell when a court date could possibly be set on this?
That's a great question. There was some talk today of a possible trial date in April, but at this point, it's premature because you don't know what kind of challenges will be brought, how long it'll take to hash that out. So there was talk of an April trial date, but like I've seen, usually when trial dates are set this early, it rarely sticks. It'll probably be much later than that.
That's good to know. Paula Reid coming to us from the courthouse there. Thank you, Paula.